Hey everyone, welcome to another segment of Everyday Enlightenment. I'm Clarita, and let's talk about boundaries because that is something that we are all getting practice with right now, and we are all able to, this is a really great time right now to be able to work with sort of reestablishing and reaffirming our boundaries, which can be hard sometimes and which can be really tough sometimes, but it's actually a really good thing. And the more clear about where you draw the line in the sand and the more clear you are about not letting people cross your boundaries, the better you understand yourself, because we don't live in a vacuum, right? And so having clear boundaries actually shows the world and the universe actually that you love yourself enough not to be available for just anything and everything. And that you love yourself enough not to engage in things that make you feel physically, emotionally, or energetically bad. And it's hardest to do this with the people that are close to us. So it can be like family, really close friends or colleagues, because there's just so much shifting right now. Of course, not everybody is going to be on the same wavelength with you, and that's totally fine, because there's a free will thing that everybody gets to have. But setting boundaries and keeping boundaries can be hard if you're a people pleaser. It can be hard if you are if you don't like yourself, if you don't love yourself. It can be hard if you don't have high self-esteem. It can also be super hard when you are in toxic relationships. And again, that can be with anybody. So, there are other scenarios, but those are kind of the main ones. And what they all have in common is usually that there's an emotional manipulation that goes on around the feelings of shame, guilt, or fear. And usually it looks like, you're having a hard time setting a boundary or holding a boundary with someone because of your belief of what it might look like if the shame, guilt, or fear actually played out. So it's actually like it's a mind game. It's a belief system. It goes back to a belief system, right? So for example, what if somebody found out that I'm a bad guy or a bad girl, or maybe I don't care enough about this, or maybe they find out the truth about XYZ, whatever. There's a lot of different beliefs that are tied into the emotional manipulation when you can't set boundaries for yourself. And so, the less you love yourself and accept yourself, the harder it's going to be for you to set boundaries. And the less that you love and accept yourself with all of your faults, all of your worries, all of your fears, like all of that stuff, it's going to be harder to set boundaries with others, especially the people that are close with you. And I just want to remind you that you are a whole and complete and divine being that gets to be in your sovereignty, right? And so you get to draw the line in the sand about what you are clear about and what you are available for in your life. Okay? And if you have a hard time doing this, it's time for work, because everybody gets to create their own reality. And in a lot of ways, it's important for us to learn who we are with the reflection of who we are in the world, and the reflection of other people, and the energy and how our energy plays off other people. Because in a vacuum, you don't learn much about yourself. If there was nobody else on the planet and it was just you wouldn't really know how to interact with people in a way that was beneficial to you and beneficial to them. And so it's kind of what we're doing now with boundaries as the world shifts. So if you need some support with setting boundaries, I've got 3 tips for you here. So one, probably the pre-tip, you have to be really honest with yourself, and you have to get really honest with yourself, okay? So the first tip in setting boundaries is to define your trigger, okay? And so identify the things that you have an emotional attachment to that cause you to feel a very strong negative I'm going to put that in quotes, emotional reaction. Because it's just that. It's a reaction and it's not an aligned response. Okay? So you have to identify your triggers, and you do that by looking at the things that you have a really strong emotional attachment to that cause you to feel a very strong negative feeling. All right? That's step one. And we all have them. We all have triggers. If you're a human, you have triggers. And we are in this time now, we are in this phase of awakening and ascension and really fast spiritual growth for those people that are available for that. And so our triggers come up in order for us to shift and for things to be seen, which leads me to step number 2. So step 1 is, identify the trigger. Step 2, once that trigger has been identified, you have to dive in and figure out the why you're being triggered. And this part is not fun. This is like the nitty-gritty part, but it's the work of shining the light of your consciousness onto the shadow aspect of yourself that has been running like background software in the background. And you have to be able to see and understand that piece of yourself in order to address the trigger. Because the emotional tie-in to what's happening has to be dealt with and seen and understood in order for you to do something with it, basically. Because if you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you have to understand why this trigger is influencing your actions and your interactions with other people, all right? And so the third step is to decide on your new boundaries. What do you want, And what are you willing to be available for or not available for? And you get to do that with it being based in self-love. You get to decide your boundaries based in self-esteem and based in the belief that you really get to create the life that you want. And it starts from the inside out. And it starts with your belief system. So it's the deep work, but we are all getting to do this on conscious and unconscious levels right now. And I hope that people do it more consciously because it's so much easier and there's so much less struggle and suffering when we do this from a conscious perspective. So nobody can do this work for you, which is unfortunate. You can have guides and coaches and things, but when it comes to triggers and belief systems and setting boundaries, really it's the wellspring of your self-love is what sort of sets that in place. So nobody can do it for you. And boundaries are a great way to teach people how you want to be treated and to sort of establish more of your light in the world. So love yourself enough to set clear boundaries, because super important for this moment of right now and where we are going over these next few months, because there's going to be a lot of astrological changes and lots of planets in retrograde in May. So just a lot of topsy-turviness that is coming our way energetically. So it's good to sort of like dig your heels in, set your boundaries for yourself out of self-love, self-respect, and self-esteem. So I hope that was helpful for you, and have a great week.